first canned dog food, Kennel Ration, invites you to television's original Zoo Parade. Brought to you direct from the world-famous Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago. Hi there, I'm Jim Hurlbut, and I'm here in the birdhouse at the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is operated by the Chicago Park District for the benefit of people everywhere. This is our 76th Zoo Parade program today, and we're awfully glad that you and your homes across the country can be with us. Today we're going to find out something about the unusual headdresses of animals and some of the uses that man has made of them. Now, a long time ago, man, or maybe it was woman, copied the headdress on this fellow, and of course the person to tell us about it is Marlin Perkins, the director of the Lincoln Park Zoo.
Hello there, Cookie. Hi, Cookie. Sweet little Cookie. How you doing? Can I come in and say hello to you? How's your head crest today? Gonna raise up your head crest and show everybody your head crest? Hello. I'm glad you could join us again today, because as Jim told you, we do have a program about the headdresses in the animal kingdom. And Cookie's gonna join right in here and help me tell you about it. Well, Cookie is a leadbeater's cockatoo from Australia, and a very nice, gentle, sweet bird. But Cookie has a very unusual head crest, a head crest of long plumes and feathers on the top of her head here that are quite distinctive. The leadbeater's cockatoo comes from Australia and is often called the pink cockatoo because all around the body here, the head, and around the base of the bill, there's a soft, soft pink. The next time you go out to your own zoo in your own city, you look up the leadbeater's cockatoo and take a look at that bird with its unusual head crest. Well, you know, the people in various parts of the world have copied their designs directly from nature, and now I'd like to show you a head crest that is something like that of our cockatoo. This is a Melanesian head crest from the made by the natives in the Melanesian Islands in the South Pacific.
Well, I think there's something wrong with this. I don't think I have it on.
Oh, yeah, well, I think there is too, Jim. I think you have to turn it around a little bit, because obviously that would get in your... Didn't that hurt your nose a little?
It bothered me just a trifle.
Yeah, I think it would bother you a little bit. Well, these are actually cockatoo feathers and an original, authentic Melanesian headdress that was loaned to us by the Chicago Natural History Museum. And that is one that I think we might say was pretty well copied somewhat from nature, except that in this case it was turned around sideways instead of the way the cockatoo wore it. But that isn't the only bird that has head crests. We have a bird here that has a very distinctive and unusual head crest, and that is the Gura pigeon, or crown pigeon, likewise from Australia. And a bird that is a lovely pale soft blue. And those feathers on the top of that bird's head were at one time a very valuable article of commerce in the millinery trade. And you ask a milliner about a Gura feather, and they'll know immediately what you're talking about, because this very fancy and unusual headdress makes a fine lady's hat, or a fine decoration for a lady's hat, and was at one time a beautiful head for feathers rather for a headdress. Well, just to show you what that looks like made up into a hat, we have asked Dale Rodney to model a real Victoria crown pigeon hat. This hat is made not only from the crest of the feather of this bird, but from the feathers of the body of the bird, and I think it makes a perfectly beautiful and lovely hat. But you know, those feathers, it's against the law to import those feathers anymore, and most of our headdresses now, where feathers are used, come from either domestic birds or pheasants or other birds that are raised in captivity. But over in Australia, there's another member of this pigeon family, this little Australian crested pigeon. It's sometimes called the crested bronze wing pigeon. And here again is an example of a little bird that has a peculiar and unusual tuft of feathers on the top of its head. These little pigeons live in flocks, and as you see, walk, well, pretty much like we do, one foot right after another one. Many birds hop, you know, Jim, from on both legs.
They're much smaller, too, aren't they, than the Gura?
Yes, the Gura pigeon, Jim, and the Victoria crown pigeon is a bird that's as big as a chicken or a duck, while this little pigeon is about the size of a turtle dove that's found around this part of the world. It's just a small pigeon, but it's a very fast-flying pigeon, and when they hunt these pigeons in Australia, which they do as a game bird over there, this bird has such very quick, rapid wing beats that they take off with an awful hurry, and then they sort of lock their wings open and fly straight away through the underbrush or across the grasslands in a very rapid action. But I think the very unusual thing about him is this crazy little head crest that he has on the top of his head. Now, in South America, we find a bird that is about the size of a large chicken, a bird called a curassow. And he has a very unusual bunch of curly feathers on the top of his head and a little bulbous growth. Oh my, he looks sleepy. A little bulbous growth on the base of his nose, which is perfectly natural. That's nature's growth there. I'm not sure what that is for, but you notice how he can elevate those little curly feathers on the top of his head? Well, I'm not sure that any of the natives in South America have actually copied the headdress of this curassow, but I do know that it would make a very interesting headdress, so we'll just give that to anyone who might be interested.
Sure, I think two of the women have copied that in the upsweep hairdo.
Well, I think it would make a better coiffure than it would a headdress. But, Jim, let's look at a bird from Africa that has a wonderful crest there. It's called the African crown crane. And as Gus Urbaki, its regular keeper, has made a pet of this bird, and Gus is stroking it now, and that part is soft as soft velvet, just on the front part of the head. And then from the top of the head are those tufts of grass-like feathers that really do look and feel like grass. The sides of his face are pink, and those pink faces and his light-colored eye, well, this is just a magnificent, wonderful bird. And, but in this case, I think it wouldn't be very difficult to imagine that the natives in West Africa, seeing a bird like this one, this crown crane, would have been inspired to copy this unusual top knot into a headdress. Because down in the French Cameroon in equatorial West Africa and up in Nigeria, where these birds live, the natives over there make all kinds of little funny hats out of fiber that they get from the grasses and from the trees, and make a little hat like this one that was actually loaned to us by the Chicago Natural History Museum and was made originally by the Jaunde tribe in equatorial West Africa. Can't you just see on Jim's head there that wonderful copy of a crown crane headdress? Well, I think it is a wonderful headdress. Don't you, Jim?
Well, I certainly do, Marlon. I'd like to take a closer look at it. And I guess it is these headdresses that make our friends here so popular. But you know, in dogdom, it's muscles that make the dog. Sure, I used to know a skinny little fellow they used to call Skinny, very unpopular, until one day, well, suppose we let him tell us.
They used to call me Skinny. I was run down and underweight and weak as a kitten. And one day a big show-off showed up and stole my girl away. It was the last straw. Wow, generation. Why didn't I think of that before? It's full of chunks of lean red meat. That's how I regained my health and my girlfriend. Thanks to good old generation.
See what I mean? Dogs, yes, and cats too, really thrive on kennelration. Not only for sturdy muscles, but for a thick, glossy coat and a lovable, happy disposition we always like to see in our pets. Yes, kennelation contains the very thing your dog loves, needs, and craves. Meat. Plenty of lean, red, U.S. government-inspected horse meat. So, friends, if you love your pet, keep him meat-happy with economical, dependable kennelation. America's first canned dog food. And now, Marlon, what's next on the zoo parade?
Jim, next we'd like to show you a bird that is related to the crown crane, the demoiselle crane from Africa too, and from India. This bird, the demoiselle crane, has a very sweeping hairdo, you might say, or crest. A blue-gray bird with a red eye, with a pale gray top on the top of its head, and brilliantly white feathers that sweep back from its eyes and the sides of its head to almost meet in back and then swoop down onto the sides of this bird's neck. This bird, too, like the crown crane, is a bird of open marshland and grassland where it feeds largely upon grains. This bird stands about 30 inches high to the top of its head, so you can see it's a large bird. And this bird, too, might be the inspiration for some of these modern hats that we're seeing on the ladies today, as Dale Rodney models this one for us. It's just a simple little black hat with some white plumes swooping down, undoubtedly inspired by the demoiselle crane, because as primitive man has often taken his ideas directly from nature, I think some of the modern designers are doing the same thing. But you know, not all of the funny-looking heads or headdresses are in the bird family. Some of those are in the monkey family. And here we see a little white-eared marmoset from South America that could be an inspiration for something really wonderful in a modern hat. I don't know how to describe that hairdo, Jim. Do you?
Well, it looks sort of like an Empress Eugenie hat. Remember the Empress Eugenie with the feather that went over the top and down the back?
Yeah, but this little marmoset that's about the size of a squirrel, a very small squirrel, coming from the jungles of South America where it scampers through the forest there in the search of fruits and berries and nuts and also insects. You see he's chattering to us there as we take his picture. And that funny Eugenie or whatever you kind of headdress you call it is certainly wonderful tufts of hair that add a grotesque appearance to this lovely little animal. You know, Jim, marmosets are small members of the monkey family and very nervous and, well, rather delicate, and yet often they're kept as pets. But when people keep them, they have to give a big variety of fresh fruits and berries, and they have to also feed them some insects. But you know, not all of the funny headdresses in even the monkey family are on the marmosets. Some of the monkeys themselves have funny headdresses. Just the other day, we asked our staff photographer for NBC, Marshall Head, to come out here and take some pictures of our bonnet macaque family, because those bonnet macaques are really out of this world. This is another member of the monkey family, and he lives in India and throughout the Malay, and is a monkey called the bonnet macaque. Macaque is a term that is used pretty generally for a large group of monkeys, like, the rhesus monkeys from India, and the lion-maned macaque, likewise from over there. They have a pretty wide distribution. They're all solidly built, sturdy animals, as you can see here in this family group. There's Papa and Mama and their year-and-a-half-old baby. These macaques live in quite large family groups in the wild state, in the trees and near the villages where they feed on a variety of fruits and nuts and insects. In fact, they often get into the gardens and raid the native gardens. The baby, like all babies, is inquisitive and explorative, and after making an inspection of a part of the cage, he's pretty quick to get back to his mommy again. They live together peacefully in our cage at the Lincoln Park Zoo as a family group, and we hope eventually that there will be many more babies and a much larger family than we have now. They're only one of many, many monkeys in our collection, but they're one that show, I think, a very unusual thing. Now, Keeper Ed Robinson is going to show you the baby as he holds it in his hand, because this is one that has, I think, a kind of an unusual headdress. The hair around the top of the head grows in a kind of a whirl. Oh, Papa objects to this a little bit. And this unusual whirl and the wrinkling of the long forehead make this look like, well, like a toupee that some bald men wear. You notice this unusual whirl starting right from the center of the top of the head, and the many wrinkles of the brow, and of course the ears. Those funny ears just add to this whole makeup and make a sort of a pixie-ish expression. Well, while Baby is showing us his headdress, Papa is, well, I'd say, bored about the whole business. But he, too, has a beautiful toupee-like headdress. And if next time you see a real toupee, you just think about the bonnet macaque monkey and the fact that nature invented that funny little headdress long before man had to cover up a bald spot. And now let's look at the reptile kingdom and see an unusual headdress in a cobra. Well, of course, it isn't actually a headdress, because the hood of a cobra is developed by the elongated ribs of the neck region, and the snake pushes these outwards away from his backbone against the skin, and forming this flattened and very unusual but characteristic hood of the cobras. You notice the markings on the back of this hood. A little light circle with some dots inside. Well, these cobras range from India clear down through Indochina to the Malay, and now over that wide range they have a variety of markings on the back of their hood. One of those is a marking that looks just about like a pair of inverted nose spectacles, the old-fashioned kind. And that's where he gets his name, spectacled cobra. The cobra is a very poisonous snake, and when he's on guard, as he is in these pictures, you can see him striking forward and down, which is the typical comparatively slow strike of a cobra. It's much slower than the strike of a rattlesnake or a moccasin, and it strikes in a very different manner. And with the cobra, you can see the strike coming. By moving your hand back and forth, you can see that strike coming and actually get your hand out of the way of that before the cobra can reach you. Well, now, this isn't a headdress, but it is a wonderful design that has been copied by man. And here is a bronze cobra that was made out in India. Full scale, this is full-size cobra, and he has the markings on the back of his hood there. And the Indian who made this one, likewise, put the markings on the inside of the hood too. But instead of being a pair of spectacles, in this case he took a little artistic liberty and made some, they look like rose flowers to me. But you do see this unusual hood here, and the fact that this cobra is a direct copy of the living thing. You see, while this may not be copied as a headdress, although I believe Cleopatra wore a headdress that was a copy of a cobra, still in all, these cobras are used in, as designs and motifs. This one, for example, was around a fountain, and you see the little hole right in the tip of his mouth here, and the water spewed out of that in a graceful arch. And there may have been several of these bronze cobras around this pool, this formal garden. That isn't all they use those for either. The cobras used as all kinds of decorations, like this little candlestick holder, for example, which is a perfect little cobra with a decoration on the top and a little place for the candle. Isn't that an interesting thing, Jim?
It certainly is, Merle. I don't think it's quite as practical these days as it probably was when it was first made, but it's certainly an attractive ornament for the home.
Well, I've had these for a good long time, Jim, particularly the little candlestick holder. And I have him on, and another one on a table at home, and I'm very fond of them. But you know, in the headdress, let's get back to that. Let's look at an Impian pheasant, a bird that has a very strange, straggly type of headdress here, and one of the most beautifully marked of all the pheasants. This Impian pheasant that comes from Indochina has these funny little shafts of feathers that flare out at the tips there as just as an unusual headdress for him. He's a rare pheasant, and he has, the markings are brilliant and accentuated by the fact that he has, they have a metallic luster to them. It looks almost like a gunmetal finish in bronze and purples all through this wonderful bird. And while I don't know of any headdresses that are copied from this one, we'll be glad to offer this as a suggestion, Jim, to anyone who cares to have it.
Well, Marlon, I've got a question I'd like to ask about the Impian pheasant. But first, do you see what I see? It looks to me as though our kennel ration dog has something he wants to tell us. A reminder about something every master should know, that their dogs love meat, crave meat, need meat every single day. And all jokes aside, I don't suppose anyone believes that a dog can talk, but I honestly do believe that if a dog could talk, your pet would ask you every single day of his life for kennel ration. And I'm sure he'd do that because kennel ration is packed with the very thing that he needs most. Meat, and lots of it. Fine cuts of lean red horse meat. And all of it fully inspected for your dog's protection by the United States government. It has all the known dog health vitamins, all the vital minerals needed daily for sturdy bones and muscle and for an attractive glossy coat. And say, for pep and energy, well, my Cocker Spaniel Iggy gets a terrific workout at home from those youngsters of mine. But he really loves it, and he keeps coming back for more. And he has his healthy disposition because he eats kennel ration. As a matter of fact, that's what I call it, a kennel ration disposition. You know, kennel ration is easy to serve, too. You don't have to thaw it out or cook it. Just dish it out. And boy, oh boy, dogs and cats, too, really gobble up their kennel ration. So get those 4 or 5 cans of kennel ration from your grocer tomorrow, and then see how your dog or cat picks up, and he has that meat-happy kennel ration disposition. You know, more than 2 million cans of kennel ration are sold every week, and kennel ration is America's #1 canned dog food. Well, now, Marlon, that question I started to ask before I got talking about kennel ration, the question I started to ask about the Impian pheasant was, is it possible that any of the hunters who are going to start out pretty soon in the fields in the United States would run across an Impian pheasant?
Well, Jim, I think that would be very unlikely because the Impian pheasant is one of the rare birds in the pheasant family. And the ones that they will be going after, however, are the ringneck pheasants, which have become established here in the United States. But over in Africa, Jim, there's a bird, if we can get away from the pheasants for a little while, there's a bird that has a very peculiar build, not only his whole body, but his head in particular, and that is the rufous-necked hornbill. When I was over in Africa a couple of years ago, I saw these birds flying, and as they would fly from one tree to another, they don't fly very rapidly, but there's a remarkable whoosh, whoosh to their wings that you can hear for, almost as far as a city block. But I think the thing about them is that peculiar crest there looks sort of like an accentuated crew cut to me on the top of their head. And then, well, of course, that enormous bill, well, that's one of the things that is outstanding about the hornbill. And the little wattles you see at the base of his neck there. But there again is a bird that has a very peculiar headdress, and a thing that you're going to notice right away when you see that bird. But you don't always notice that when you see other birds. For example, take our friend the peacock. That peacock is a bird that has such an enormous fan that you would be paying attention to that unless you just concentrate on the head itself. And when you do concentrate on the head, then you see those little tufts of feathers sticking up that remind me for all the world like a Spanish senorita with her mantilla and comb. And those little feathers that just on a shaft of the base of the feather that go up into the air and then spread out there a little bit. Well, let's see how they resemble Dale here as she models a true Spanish comb and mantilla. And I'm not saying for sure that that's where the Spaniards first got their idea for decorating their ladies with a comb and flowers and a mantilla, but still in all there is a resemblance. And so every time I see a peacock and I pay attention to his head and see those little feathers sticking up there, it reminds me at least of the Spanish senorita. In South America is a bird that has a peculiar headdress, the harpy eagle. This eagle's as big as our eagles, but he has enormous talons on his feet that are, well, they're just heavier than those of almost any other eagle. Joe McHale has tamed this bird, and Joe is stroking his tail there and his feathers just now, and his talons. You see how gentle this bird is with Joe. He doesn't bother him at all. But he's doing that so that the bird will look down and show you this unusual head crest that he has on the top of his head. Well, the Indians in South America have copied this kind of a headdress and made almost a dead ringer for it by having a headdress of feathers that they put on their head in exactly the same way. And as Jim models our headdress from the Choco Indians of Paraguay, can't you see the similarity between the harpy eagle headdress and the headdress of these Indians? Here again is a headdress that was loaned to us by the Chicago Natural History Museum, so it is an authentic piece.
Well, I don't know whether I look more like a harpy eagle or like the South American Indian.
Yeah.
I feel just a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think I'd care for this for a steady diet. But Marlon, has certainly been a wonderful trip to the Zoo Parade again today, and we've all enjoyed your wonderful stories. I know the folks have, too. And, by the way, what's on the schedule for next week?
Oh, Jim, you remember a couple of weeks ago we did a program on the small predators? Well, next week we're going to do a program on the large predators featuring the jaguar. And we're also going to have some film of our famous lowland gorilla bushman, who is a full-grown male, and we're going to have a report on his present health.
Oh, I know I'll be here to hear that, and I'm sure that everyone else will want to be, too. And I hope you will be here next week at this time when Marlon Perkins will lead us on another Zoo Parade direct from the world-famous Lincoln Park Zoo and presented by Kennel Ration. And in the meantime, this is Jim Hurlbut reminding you to feed your dog what he needs and craves, plenty of that lean, red meat from Kennel Ration, America's first canned dog food.